So let's get started. Um, my name is Amy Sheridan. I'm the founder of Wins Media. I'm the voice of amysheridan.com. I am proud to bring this series to all of you. It just gives me so much joy to elevate the visibility of women influencing sports and entertainment. It's time for this. This is exciting. So thank you for being here and following along with us on the journey and supporting us. My guest today, Elisa Padilla, is a sports and entertainment brand marketing expert. She cultivates community-centric fan bases at the highest level. She has overseen the design and evolution of iconic brands at the intersection of sports, entertainment, and popular culture, including the Barclays Center, the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Islanders, the Miami Marlins, and as if that was not enough, also Apple. I am now going to turn it over to Elisa to give you her high-level summary of her bio, and then we'll start in with the questions.
Yeah, Amy, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And I'm a C-level marketing executive with over 2 decades of experience in sports and entertainment. And most importantly, I am the owner of Trevor and Trey. Trey's very camera shy, but I just wanted Trevor to make a cameo appearance, and he's going to be off camera now so that we can have a great conversation.
Thank you so much for bringing him. I think everybody really appreciates, especially in the time that we're in now, just so much authenticity, being inside people's homes. It really is a special time. So thank you for bringing him today, and hopefully we'll see him again.
Yes.
Okay. So before I start in with the questions, I'm going to close out the poll now. Thank you to all of you guys who participated. And I will do my absolute best to watch the chat as we go, but please forgive me if it takes me a little bit of time. I'll probably save questions for the end. Feel free to submit your questions as we go, but I'll do my best. If not, I'll address them at the end. Okay. All right, Elisa, let's get going. I'm going to start with a tough question. I'm in the business of visibility. I'm in the business of helping women and leaders and men in sports and entertainment really shine as thought leaders. And part of that process is really getting very comfortable with telling your story. Okay. The first question is, across your roles as a brand marketer in sports and entertainment, what do you believe differentiated you from your peers?
I think that what set me apart from my peers was my diversified background. I was very, very clear in the fact that when, I looked ahead of where I wanted to be ultimately as the chief marketing officer, that I wanted to be able to sit in a room and talk about media and talk about multicultural marketing and talk about, niche marketing. And I wanted to make sure that I was educated in multiple facets, not just strictly consumer marketing.
Awesome. Okay. So do you want to get into your background a little bit more, sort of personally, what brings you to sports and entertainment? I'm going off script, but what brings you to sports and entertainment? Tell me a bit about your passion. You talked about multicultural marketing, emerging markets. Can you get into that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So I guess, look, what brought me to sports so I'm one of 6. I think that's really important. And I grew up in a household with a very strict Latina mother where girls weren't allowed to play sports. And my older brother, who has earned his wings in heaven, was an amazing high school basketball player. So when our family outings were to go see him play basketball. So my sisters and I were, we'd sit on the bench and we'd cheer him on, and we were the cheerleaders. And that was my first exposure to the game. And, as I went through college and I was like, okay, what am I really passionate about? sports marketing started to just emerge as a career path. And I did an internship that was part of my undergrad curriculum. And I originally wanted to go into television. And so I did my internship at MSG Network, and I sat next to the sales and marketing folks. And I was much more interested that summer in what they were doing than in what I was doing. And I quickly went back to school. And it wasn't until my first semester senior year that I took my first marketing class. And I fell in love with marketing. And what I love about marketing is the psychological aspect of telling stories to make consumers believe that they need your product. So, after doing my internship at MSG and being exposed to the world's most famous arena, that's where I started my career with the New York Knicks.
That is so great. I love the story about, you said you're one of 6 and you weren't allowed to play sports, so you had to go be a cheerleader at your brother's games. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Okay. So digging a bit into, one of the themes of this series is, pulling women up the ladder, is, inspiring rising leaders. And so I'm going to go to a question focused on that. In your opinion, what is one key skill? Maybe it's the one that's personal to you, that a rising sports marketer must possess or cultivate in order to maintain success in his or her career?
So I'm going to answer that in a 2-part answer. One is, from a marketing perspective, you have to have the pulse on what your consumers want. You almost have to be one step ahead of your consumer wants and needs. Apple does an amazing job at that. And what I can say, and I've always approached my jobs with this manner, but coming off of 2020, marketers have to be empathetic and compassionate. They can't be beating consumers over the head with a sales message, because we are in, we're living in a day today, Amy, where no one has lived through what we're living through. So the brands that are doing it right now are the brands that are leaning in, and they're being compassionate and they're being empathetic. And they're really looking at their brand story through their customers' eyes. And I think that that's really critical. And as we think post, COVID-19 and coming out of this pandemic, I think that those are things that have to now be top of mind as opposed to back of mind.
Yeah, I think great point. And I think a lot of people would agree with you. I want to just piggyback on that question and just getting a bit more specific to maybe people who are listening that work for a team and do marketing for a team, or people that represent sponsors who, work with teams. Have you seen anything that's being done, any brands that stick out in your mind, any teams that stick out in your mind who are doing a good job of this empathy?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, when I think about the brands that are out there, I think Clorox is one that comes to mind. Clorox signed a deal with the WNBA, and it's all about cleanliness. And they're highlighting their products in a way that's relevant to us now, right? Because if anyone's like me, I'm a germaphobe. I'm a germaphobe prior to COVID, and with COVID, forget it. It's just like, I can't get enough, Lysol wipies, but it's relevant to what we're living through. And they're showcasing their products in a way that's relevant to what you're going through now. And the other brand, I don't think that they have a team association, but it's Charmin. I think Charmin in April of 2020 pivoted from their traditional, the promoting toilet paper to just the message shifted to being at home. And, it was the Bear family being at home, and, using the toilet paper was secondary. And the only reason that I bring that up is because they, as a marketer who was like, going, like looking at how brands were responding, they quickly read the room, if you will, and were able to pivot their advertising message to one that was much more relevant.
Yes, I love that you're saying they read the room.
Yes.
I feel like I'm gonna pin that for the quote afterwards. So my next question is going up a bit higher, and this one we're talking about CMOs. So this is a question for you about CMOs. So when you're thinking about the teams, the leagues, the brands, the venues across sports and entertainment, in your view, what should the CMOs be focused on in this particular time and place?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that they have to think about engagement, right? How are they engaging their fans when their fans aren't able to join the team that they have an affinity towards at the ballpark or at the arena? So an engagement looks different, right? It looks different for a baseball game or a baseball team, excuse me, than perhaps, a hockey game. But at the end of the day, is still having that one-to-one connection with your customer or your fans to continue that fan affinity. And I think that, Amy, the other thing that they have to be thinking about is they need to be looking ahead in regards to when fans, I mean, right now there are some football teams that can have fans in the stadium, but what does that look like when, everybody has been vaccinated and we're able to go back to, attending games at ballparks, at football stadiums? What is the hybrid model, right? Because right now people are home. They're not spending money on tickets. They're not spending money on parking. They're not spending money on concessions. So they're home and they're engaged. So the CMO has to think about, okay, what is that experience like at home and in the game location? And the last thing that they should be thinking about is, how are they rewarding loyalty? Right? The fans that have been cheering the teams on, even without being able to go to, the arena, the ballpark, the football stadium. I think that that's really, really important. And, one of the things, I'm going to go off script here for a second, but, one of the things when COVID started and we had to quarantine, one of the things, because my life had been turned upside down, the one thing that I felt normal to me was going to get my cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. Yes. And Dunkin' Donuts has rewarded me for going to Dunkin' Donuts to pick up my coffee. And, they quickly, they wanted to push drive-through. So what if you had their app, they gamified it. You were getting 100 points, for ordering ahead. So the reason that I shared that specific example is because CMOs at the team and at the league level need to be thinking about that as they're looking ahead.
I love that. Actually not something I've heard, which is so great that you're bringing that up. And I'm a little jealous because Starbucks hasn't done anything for me.
Oh.
Right? And that's the place that I went the moment that I realized, like, it's okay to leave my house. I can go outside. It's open. And so I love that. I feel like that creates a differentiation point between two competitors that they're really leaning in on loyalty, rewards, and thanking their loyal customers. And one other thing that sort of comes to mind for me is you know, is there something to the teams, specifically the teams, who cater to loyal fan bases, diehards, avids, casuals, right? Leaning into the idea of how can we bring joy to fans who are hurting, right? I don't know that I'm hearing much about that. I think there's a lot of brands trying to keep the hype alive, trying to keep the touch points alive. To your point earlier, how do we engage with fans at home and at the event? And it's very focused on, you know, the event, right? What about the fans that have experienced loss, right? Because I think when we look at sports and entertainment, they bring joy. They're an outlet. How do we lean into, you know, that message that, you know, we know that some fans are hurting? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, you know what, I'm a strong believer in surprise and delights, right? So when you think about sitting at a team, you're not going to know unless someone writes an email or writes a letter, you're not going to know how your fans are hurting, right? So I think that there are opportunities, Amy, where teams, and it doesn't have to be, you know, a lavish investment. You know, you can do surprise and delights, and bring that joy to fans that, you know, may not be doing all that great, or who may have had, you know, a loss during this time. I'm a believer in that, because you know what, I believe that in life it's the smaller things that matter the most, rather than the grandiose, you know, gestures. So you can't have an athlete show up at your house, but you know what about doing, you know, a recording from your star quarterback or your star, you know, basketball player, just saying, hey, checking in, you know, and then doing whatever the message is, and then you blast it via email, right? That's a surprise and delight. And that's something that, you know, if a fan is hurting, that is something that you could really, can solve for that.
Yeah, I love that. I love surprise and delight. That sounds really great. And I feel like using channels that already exist, I mean, we all know that that recording exists, but taking it and using it for good in this situation, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on, this one gets into the life of a marketer in sports and entertainment. And I know you can speak to this. So how much does winning literally play a role in a marketer's job in this business?
Amy, winning cures it all. Winning sells tickets. Winning makes the soda fresh. Winning, the popcorn isn't stale. It's just like winning. If you're winning, if your team is winning, you have no problems. And I'm saying that in tongue in cheek, because when the team is losing, ticket prices are too high, nobody's buying tickets. The folks that are coming, this was pre-COVID, you know, the folks that were coming to the arena, the soda's flat, the hot dog is cold. But winning, you know, when I look at sports offers a distraction from your everyday life, right? So when your team is winning, it's like life is great. Yeah. You know, I'm going to correlate this back to my Dunkin' Donuts obsession. But when I lived in New Jersey and the Giants would win on Monday, I would get a $1 coffee. So, and I wasn't even a Giants fan, right? So, but they were the local team. So I say that because winning just solves all problems.
I love it. I love the sensory images. It's making me feel nostalgic. For when we could go attend a live sporting event and, you know, taste and smell and hear all those things. I think when they first brought back baseball, one of my favorite things was just hearing the sounds through the TV.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just even having it on in the background. So I love that. And yeah, I think people that are here on the call would agree. I think, people who listen that are in the industry would agree, and in my house, it is this way. It's like when a team is winning, our team, the team we work for, things are good. Life is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Life is better. Life is so much better.
Right. And then to flip it, the challenge, again, going off script, to a marketer is when the team is not winning.
Mm-hmm.
And so in your career, is there anything that comes to mind, examples of creativity, thinking outside the box, initiatives that you have done or led in a situation where your team was not in such a great situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll go back to when I worked for the Nets and they were the lame duck at Prudential Center. It was their last year before moving to Brooklyn. And I mean, we did, because Prudential, the proximity to the Ironbound section in Newark, we did a restaurant program where it was if you dined on a certain, whether it was if we were promoting Tuesday night games, if you dined there the week before, you got 10% off a ticket price, right? So we were very, very creative in terms of using the proximity of the venue to draw fans to buy tickets. And then fast forward to my time in Miami when, the Marlins, were really, really bad. I mean, we did initiatives. We did an offer around Cinco de Mayo. So we did, a $5 ticket offer. That was a really big one that we did. And then we also did with the Little League program in our outreach. It was, we gave free tickets to the kids who participated in youth sports, because we knew that if the kid wanted to come, or the child, excuse me, wanted to come to the ball game, then their parent would have to buy the ticket. So, it's those types of things. I mean, we even tried to do a Thursday night offer where it's if you bought a ticket, you got, credit at the new concession stands, right? Because we were trying to promote the new concession stands. So, I mean, we really try to look at, another facet of what is part of the game experience, and culinary is a big part of that.
Absolutely. Great. Okay. So let's talk a bit about, we're in on this, the angle of women in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And the next question gets into that. So in your viewpoint, from the history of your career, looking back, does visibility play a role in career success for a woman or a man in sports and entertainment?
Yes, yes, and yes, and yes. And, I thought about this question, and I want to share a real life experience because I think it'll really hit home. So, in my former CMO position, and I don't want to, I want to tell the story and be as authentic as possible, but I also want to protect the people that were part of this. So, we had a partner, and our CEO had gone to the partner's office, and there was a meeting, and I was not included. And it just so happened that the partner on the partner side said, "Oh, what are your initiatives around Latinos? And do you have anybody that's Latino or Latina on your executive team?" And, the head of the team came back, and I got pulled into the HR department's office. The head of HR, I got pulled into his office, and he said to me, he's like, "Hey," he's like, "do you know so-and-so who works at this brand?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know him." And he was like, "Have you ever attended any meetings with him?" And I was like, "No." And I'm sitting there thinking, like, where's this going? And I was like, "No," I'm like, I've never as the head of marketing, I've never been asked to participate in meetings with him. I know the people who work for him, and, you know, we have a great partnership. He's like, does he know that you're Latina? And I like looked at the head of HR and I started laughing. I'm like, where is this going? I'm like, so now you're pulling me into your office because I'm not included in meetings to highlight the fact that, you know, that number one, that I'm head of marketing, number two, that I'm Latina, and number three, that I'm a woman. Because guess what? When I held that position, I think I was only one of two of the 30 teams that, you know, that looked like me. So I share that because visibility, whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're white, whether you're Black, whether you're Asian, it doesn't matter. Visibility matters. You know what? It's when I think about, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion is such a hot button now. But the reality of it is that, you know what? It matters. It matters because when you walk into a meeting and you're representing a company, the people that are walking into that meeting with you should represent the community that you're serving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. I'm sure that people on the line here can that resonates with them. So thank you. Okay, so along the same lines, name a few women in sports and entertainment who have influenced your career, and just tell us why.
So look, I think I'm going to answer this I'm going to share the person who inspired me to take the career path that I did. She was my very first boss. Her name is Pam Harris. And I'm sure that, you know, everyone who knows me, whenever I do an interview and this question is asked, it's always the same answer. Pam Harris was director of marketing when I was an assistant, when I started my career as an assistant at the New York Knicks. She took me under her wing and she taught me everything that I know about marketing. And she inspired me to go to graduate school to get an MBA in marketing because she had an MBA. She inspired me to want to be a director of marketing for an NBA team because that's what she was. She is so smart and creative and I can never like fill her shoes, but what I can tell you is that she was a mentor. She still is my mentor. I still stay in touch with her. She was very, very influential through, you know, for my career path. But what I can say, Amy, is that, you know, I have women that I talk to every Tuesday and Thursday who inspire me. I mean, I have women, there's a young woman who I worked with in Brooklyn, who is currently working at Twitch. And, you know, one day she's going to be the CEO of a company and she inspires me. You know, when we were working together and, you know, I just like her approach, you know, and I always look around the room, you know, it doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter what position you hold. It's about, you know, the values that you share. It's about the passion that you share. It's about the vision that, you know, that you have that inspires other women. I mean, I have colleagues now who are starting their own businesses who inspire me that I'm like, oh my God, I'm not that brave, but you know what? You're inspiring me to think differently. And so, you know, I don't want to like say names because at the end of the day, I don't want anyone to feel like I'm leaving them out because the reality of it is that everyone that I speak to inspires me in one way or the other.
I love that answer. Okay, so and what I'm just noting here, I'm a note taker. I can't help myself, but you know, you're talking about, you know, in the business we talk about the ladder, right? you know, which rung are you on, right? And you're saying it doesn't matter what rung you're on, but you should look up and down the ladder when you're looking for inspiration. I think that's really powerful. I love that you shared both of those sides of it. You know, and just to kind of, you know, stick a, what's the word? To finish it, right? To kind of like finish your thought a bit, and bring it back to the WINS mission for a second. You know, when we talk about visibility, when I asked you that question, you know, and rightfully so, you're answering it from the perspective of, you know, yourself being visible, right? You know, being visible as a professional and how important that is to your success. But then when we talk about, you know, leadership and inspiration and women that have inspired you, you know, what the theme is here is that because you saw a woman in leadership with her MBA doing amazing things, you knew it was possible, right? And so that's the other angle of visibility is if you're being seen, you are paying it forward without doing a single extra thing, right? Because you are allowing other women, other people in this business to see you, right? And so then the more you're visible, you know, more outwardly visible, the more they can see you, right? So it's a win-win-win. And I just love that. I think, you know, I really liked your answer. Okay, so as we wrap it up here, I just wanted to get into, you know, coming off of 2020, what were some wins that you had, you know, big, small, professional or personal that you want to share?
Well, look, surviving 2020 is my biggest win. And I know this isn't, I'm not coming at that question as a woos me. That's not where I'm coming from. I suffered so much loss in 2020 that the fact that I was able to turn the page is enough for me to say that that was my biggest win. I will say that launching the platform Lunchtime Conversation by Kick It with EP was also a really huge and a small win. You know, it provided me with an opportunity to turn a negative into a positive. And, you know, when I think about the WINS mission about elevating women and giving women visibility, you know, Kick It by EP and the Lunchtime Conversation is just my tiny contribution in terms of having a platform for women to tell their story. And you know what, Amy, I really never, I'm not, anyone who knows me knows that I am, you know, equating this to a basketball analogy. I am the sixth man on the bench. I'm not one of the starters, right? And I'm okay with that because that's my role. And I feel that, you know, for me, this IG live series is so important because it's not only building community, but it's giving women visibility, that, you know what, we would never have these conversations. So, you know, while that's a tiny contribution of how I'm paying it forward, you know, I look at what you're doing, which I think is amazing. You know, you're not only elevating, you know, people, women, but you know what, you're building a community so that we can cheer each other on. And I think that that's really, really important. And you know what, I want to close it up by saying that, you know what, there's enough room at the table for all of us. And I'm sorry, I just, you know, again, 2020 was so tough, that when I think about 2021, I'm like, we're all gonna have to have big wins, and how they come to life, I don't know, but life is just so precious, and tomorrow isn't guaranteed. So, you know what, extending a hand, if it doesn't cost you anything, just kindness really matters.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. And I think everyone that's here can just give Elisa a virtual hug.
Thank you.
I see some virtual virtual hugs coming in on the chat. But, you know, I'm really, really appreciative of you being here today. Thank you for sharing all of your insights. I know that I am inspired, and hopefully women on the call feel inspired, and anyone else who listens to this. I think at this point in time, I'd love to open it up for questions. I know that we got at least one, and I will go ahead and I will read that for you so that you don't have to do that.
Thank you.
If anyone else has a question, please go ahead and submit it now, and I will ask on your behalf. Okay, this one is for my friend Molly Arbogast. If you were a CMO of a national consumer products or service brand, would you have bought a Super Bowl spot this year? It says, pretend you have the budget. If so, how would you have handled creative?
So, Molly, I think that the answer is no. I wouldn't have bought a Super Bowl ad because the cost for that spot is like $5.5 million. And when I think about the state of where we are, just in terms of, you know, this global pandemic, and thinking with leading with empathy and compassion to my, you know, customers, I don't think that that's the right move. And I believe that there are two big brands that are actually sitting out this year, Budweiser and Coke being two of them. And I know that under the Budweiser brand, they're gonna highlight other beers. But the reason that I bring that up is because it's you know, there's so many, tying it back to your you know, your other question in regards to so many people that are hurting. How could you, from a, you know, just from a values perspective, knowing that your customers may or may not be in a situation where they could purchase your product, why would you showboat and spend $5.5 million on a 30-second ad when you could invest that back into the community?
Looks like I agree with you, Elisa.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
I have another question coming in. This one is from Tammy Powers. Thank you, Tammy. It says, I'm championing women in motorsports to bring inclusion into the major leagues, specifically female race car drivers. Brands have not been responsive since Danica. Any advice?
Oh, that's interesting. So my advice there would be to look at why brands were attracted to Danica, and get some key insights there. And then see how you could apply those insights moving forward. And if anything, you know, it'll give you visibility into why brands were attracted and responded to Danica. That would be my approach.
Thank you.
So solving for that one.
Thank you so much. Okay, I have one more question. This is from Connie. How can brands best champion women in sports and women's leagues this coming year?
By showing up, Connie, you know, and what I mean by that is, you know what, women sports are so important. And I think that in 2020, you know, we were able to, because I guess, you know, the state that we were in, people were being at home, and, you know, we were on a global timeout. People were able to pay attention to the WNBA and other women's sports. And I think that, and, you know, looking ahead, I think that they have to show up. So whether it's doing a local sponsorship with the team, whether it's having, from a brand perspective, you know, sponsoring these women athletes, I think that, you know, it's worth the investment because women's sports aren't going away. And I think that when you think about, you know, the next generation of fans, you have to get them early. And, you know, and it was, again, 2020 was, you know, we had so much loss. But when I think about the tragic loss of Kobe Bryant and his daughter, and, you know, it was just a year, 2 days ago, and you saw how the flashbacks to how he supported, you know, women, and he was coaching his daughter's basketball game. Like, it just wasn't smoke and mirrors that he was showing up at LA Sparks games. You know, he was committed. And I think that people are watching, and I think that people are still inspired by his actions, even though he's no longer with us.
Thank you so much for that. You know, there was so much in 2020 that was devastating. And, you know, that was one of the big ones that was early on in the year. So thanks for bringing that up. Well, I want to wrap it up. I want to thank you so much again for all of the amazing insights, and for being here, for being visible, for sharing with others in the business. And I thank all of you who are here, who RSVP'd and showed up today, for being here. We will continue to do this all year long, every other week, at least for now. Maybe we'll add more dates as we go. And before I go, I did want to just tease our next guest. Our next guest will be Jen Adams, who is the CEO and founder of Gold Light Leadership. I think some people on this call know Jen. I know Molly knows Jen. So we're going to keep this ball rolling, and you know, keep it interesting, and keep all of our guests on their toes, and hopefully inspire women, and you know, do all the amazing stuff. So thanks so much, Elisa, for this today. We all really value your voice.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much for having me, and, you know, good luck. And I will keep rooting for you, and I will be attending. I'm going to be a future guest, not attendee, excuse me, on your next one. So thank you. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.